Hello, my friends. Come in for a moment. Set the world down beside you. I want to ask you something small. Do you ever notice the way a cup of tea behaves? Not the taste, the moment. That hush in the middle of a noisy day. Maybe you're holding a cup right now. Or maybe someone you love is sitting by a window, hands wrapped around warm porcelain, watching the steam drift upward like a thought they haven't spoken yet. Feel that heat against your palms, that soft, steady glow, and the steam, rising in a thin ribbon, curling into the air as if it's trying to ask something. There's a stillness in it, a pause that feels older than you are. It's so ordinary we almost forget to see it. But that's the strange part, because if you really stop, really look, tea becomes a quiet little mystery. Think of the things humans have carried through history. Sugar, sweet, instantly tempting. Wine, rich, strong, capable of changing how you feel. But tea? Tea isn't like that. It's not intensely sweet. It's not dramatic. Sometimes it's even a little bitter. It doesn't shout. It doesn't try to impress you. It simply stays. And that leads us to the real mystery behind this whole story. Why did this one humble leaf survive every age, while so many other things faded away? It wasn't always easy to find. It wasn't always cheap. It wasn't always fashionable. So what made people keep reaching for it, again and again? This isn't a story of dusty dates or forgotten empires. It's a story of moments. Ordinary moments, quiet moments, and sometimes unexpected ones. Moments where something small made a difference. Moments where this leaf kept showing up. So if you're willing, come with me. Let's follow that thread of steam backward, from modern cafes to ancient mountains, and discover how tea didn't just survive history, it became part of it. Let's begin with the first moment the past reaches back toward us. Our story opens with a legend, one whispered long before tea had a name. In ancient China, there lived an emperor and healer named Shennong. His task was simple and dangerous, to taste every plant he could find. Some healed the body, others poisoned it. The only way to know was to try. One afternoon, he tasted the wrong plant. His strength drained away, his head spun, his legs gave out. He collapsed beneath a tree beside a small fire where a pot of water was slowly heating. As he lay there, barely conscious, the wind stirred the branches above him. A few dry leaves drifted down. They landed quietly in the hot water. Shennong watched, too weak to move, as the clear water slowly changed color. Not green, not dark, but a light golden shade, warm and soft, like sunlight passing through thin leaves. A clean, fresh smell rose into the air. He drank. The warmth spread through his body, the dizziness eased, his thoughts cleared. What had been poison loosened its grip. He had found something that restored him. He called it cha. Is this story literally true? Probably not, but the truth inside it mattered. From the beginning, people understood tea as something that helped the body return to balance. An antidote, a quiet correction. That idea didn't fade with the legend. In villages, people used tea in simple, practical ways. A warm brew for discomfort, a bitter cup for aches. Nothing elaborate, just something that made you feel a little more steady. Centuries later, tea found a different purpose. High in the mountains, Buddhist monks lived lives that demanded deep focus. Hours of still meditation, careful copying of sacred texts, and the same quiet routines repeated every day. Their enemy wasn't danger, it was sleepiness, heavy eyelids, wandering thoughts. For them, Fatigue was the poison. Tea became the answer. It didn't jolt them awake. It didn't agitate the mind. It brought a calm alertness, warm hands, clear thoughts, attention held gently in place. Tea became an anchor. But for tea to move beyond villages and mountain monasteries, it needed something more. It needed a storyteller, a teacher, someone who could gather scattered traditions and give them shape. That person was Lu Yu, who lived during China's Tang dynasty. Lu Yu was an orphan raised in a monastery. His daily task was simple: make tea. But for Lu Yu, tea was never just tea. He watched the leaves as they opened in hot water. He leaned in to smell the steam. He noticed how the colors shifted, from pale to light golden to deeper amber, depending on the water, the fire, the leaf. Other people drank tea. Lu Yu studied it. He became fascinated by everything: which water tasted cleanest, how fire changed flavor, why one cup felt calming while another felt sharp. Tea, to him, was alive. So he traveled. He walked through tea fields, speaking with farmers. He observed how leaves were picked, early morning, careful hands. He watched how they were dried, rolled, and stored. And he wrote. Slowly, carefully, he gathered everything he learned into a book called The Classic of Tea. It was the first book of its kind in the world. Not a poem, not a legend, but a guide. Because of Lu Yu, tea gained structure, language, meaning. Tea was no longer only medicine or habit or monastery drink. It became something people could learn. Poets brewed it while searching for words. Scholars drank it while reading late into the night. Friends shared it while talking quietly. Tea moved fully into Chinese daily life, not just as a drink, but as a way of paying attention. And when Buddhist monks later traveled from China to Japan and Korea, they carried more than scriptures and tea leaves. They carried Lu Yu's ideas. They carried a way of tea, clearly shaped, carefully named, and ready to change. Tea arrived in Japan from China, but once it reached Japan, it didn't spread outward. It turned inward. It slowed down. In China, tea moved through daily life, shared in conversation, poured beside writing desks, sipped during moments of rest. It flowed with people. Now imagine Japan. You step away from noise. You slide open a wooden door. The room is small, simple, quiet. Water warms over charcoal, not boiling, just breathing. A bamboo whisk touches the bowl, steady and unhurried. Nothing is rushed. This shift came through Zen Buddhism. One monk in particular shaped it, Eisai, who brought tea seeds and Zen teachings from China to Japan in the 12th century. To Zen monks, tea wasn't about taste or talk. It was about staying awake, staying present, keeping the mind clear through long hours of meditation. Tea became part of discipline. Look down. A bowl is placed before you. It isn't thin or polished. It feels solid in your hands. The surface is uneven. The color is like stone. Nothing is hidden. In Japan, these small marks mattered. They showed use, time, real life. This way of tea became known as chado, the way of tea. The goal was no longer drinking. It was creating one calm moment, one shared silence, one pause. That is how tea survived in Japan. It didn't spread wider, it went deeper. And by going deeper, it found a new way to last. Tea became a quiet doorway into focus, into stillness, into spirit. Japan was one answer, but not the only one. Elsewhere in Asia, tea chose movement instead of stillness. On the high plateaus of Tibet, it was mixed with butter and salt, becoming fuel for cold days and hard lives. Across the long routes of Central Asia, along what would later be called the Silk Road, tea was pressed into bricks, carried by traders as food, drink, and even currency. Different lives, different needs, different answers. As tea took root and began to flower across Asia, you might wonder, what happened when it traveled even farther west? Tea did not arrive in the West as a drink. It arrived as a rumor. For centuries, it moved slowly along the Silk Road, carried by traders, sealed in small chests, crossing deserts and mountain passes where journeys failed more often than they succeeded. By the time it reached Europe, tea felt almost unreal. Most people had never seen the plant. Few had tasted it. Fewer still could afford it. To the West, tea was not comfort or ritual. It was distance, mystery, and risk, compressed into a handful of dried leaves. And still, those few dry leaves were worth more than anyone expected. An ounce of tea could cost as much as a fine piece of jewelry. It wasn't a daily drink. It wasn't even a pleasure. At first, tea was treated like medicine, used carefully, sparingly. It was also something else, a symbol of impossible luxury, a taste of a distant world most people would never see. And yet, people were curious. Then, in the 1600s, something changed. European ships began sailing directly to China. Tea no longer arrived once a year by camel. It arrived by ship, packed into wooden chests. It was still expensive, still rare, but now it was real. People could see it, smell it, taste it. Curiosity began to turn into desire. So what turned an expensive curiosity into a true obsession? Often, history doesn't change because of big ideas, but because of one person's quiet habit. That moment came in 1662, when Catherine of Braganza, a Portuguese princess, married Charles II. She arrived at the English court with something deeply personal: tea. She didn't announce it. She didn't promote it. She simply drank it, because it was familiar to her, part of her daily routine. Each day, she prepared her tea carefully, using the delicate porcelain cups she had brought with her. Now imagine the scene. The queen lifts a small cup. Steam rises softly. The smell is light, clean, unfamiliar. Around her, the court watches. While everyone else drinks heavy ale or wine, the queen drinks tea. People notice. And when people notice royalty, they imitate. If the queen drinks tea, then tea must mean refinement, control, taste. Slowly, quietly, tea spreads. Not because people loved the flavor, but because they wanted to copy elegance. This was the first stage of obsession. Tea stayed inside glittering palace rooms and polished halls, but it was still trapped there. It looked beautiful, but it still hadn't solved anything people could feel in their bodies. That came almost 2 centuries later. In the 1840s, with Anna Russell, the Duchess of Bedford, tea found its next turning point. Anna lived at the center of English high society. Upper-class English life followed a strange rhythm. Lunch was light. Dinner was late, sometimes 8 or 9 at night. By 4 in the afternoon, Anna felt it every day. Her stomach tightened. Her head ached. Her energy dropped suddenly. This wasn't imagination. It was hunger. Her solution was simple. Each afternoon, she asked for a small tray in her private room, a pot of hot tea, bread, and a few small cakes. That first sip mattered. Warm, gentle, steady. It settled her body and carried her through the long evening. Soon, she invited friends. What began as a private solution became a shared habit. Afternoon tea was born. This time, tea didn't spread because it looked elegant. It spread because it worked. From palace fashion to physical need, tea crossed a line. It entered ordinary life. And yet, one fragile problem remained. Every single leaf still came from far away. To truly survive in the West, tea needed more than love. It needed roots, soil of its own, somewhere beyond China. And the search for those roots would change tea forever. To find that new soil, someone had to accomplish a daunting task. They needed to bring an entire living crop, its plants, its secrets, its skills, across the world. This is where the story takes a sharper turn. The man at the center wasn't a king or a general. He was a plant expert, a Scottish botanist named Robert Fortune. To some, he was a bold explorer. To others, he quietly crossed a line to take knowledge that wasn't his to take. In the 1840s, the powerful British East India Company, a trading giant that controlled vast resources, sent him on a mission. Go to China, learn the secrets of tea, and find a way to grow it elsewhere. To do what they asked, Fortune couldn't remain an outsider. He changed his clothes. He changed his hairstyle. He learned the language. Disguised as a local merchant, he traveled into misty tea hills, places where tea had been grown for generations. There he learned by watching. He saw how the leaves were picked and handled. But his biggest discovery was a simple truth that stunned him. In the West, people thought green tea and black tea came from completely different plants. But in those hills, Fortune realized the truth. They were the same leaf, the same bush. The difference was not in the plant, but in what happened after the pick. If leaves were heated quickly, they stayed green. If they were allowed to rest and darken, they turned deep red, what the West would call black tea. Same leaf, different paths. He wrote it all down. But knowledge wasn't enough. He needed to bring living plants across the ocean, and that was thought to be impossible. The breakthrough came from a new invention: sealed glass cases, tiny traveling greenhouses that kept young plants alive at sea. They weren't Fortune's creation, but they became his key. With them, he could finally move living tea across the ocean. Months later, those living plants reached new soil. They took root in the hills of India and in Ceylon, today's Sri Lanka, the island just south of India, where warm, misty highlands were perfect for tea. And with that, everything changed. Tea was no longer tied to one land, no longer dependent on one fragile root. Plantations spread, harvests increased, supply became steady, prices fell. What had once been rare and uncertain became reliable and everyday. Tea was no longer surviving by chance or fashion. It had become a system, built to last. And with its roots secured, tea was ready for its most demanding role yet: to fuel a world that no longer rested. And that world was arriving fast. Our story moves to a louder, harsher place. The world was changing fast, and the sound of that change was the sharp cry of the factory whistle. The Industrial Revolution had begun. In cities like London and Manchester, millions of people no longer worked with soil or books, but with machines. The rhythm of life hardened. 14 or 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, inside buildings filled with roaring engines, coal dust, and smoke. For workers, survival became physical. Bodies were pushed to exhaustion. Food was simple and limited. And there was another danger most people don't think about today: water. City water was often polluted. Pumps spread diseases like cholera and typhoid. A single drink could make you violently ill. You might wonder, why didn't people just drink beer or ale like they had for centuries? They tried, but beer dulled the senses, and in a factory full of fast-moving machines, dull minds and slow hands became dangerous. Workers needed something different. And here, in this dark, noisy world, tea changed again. It became practical. To make tea, water had to be boiled. That one step mattered. Boiling killed invisible bacteria. Without meaning to, tea became one of the safest drinks a worker could have. Then there was the leaf itself. Tea didn't numb the body, it cleared the head. Its gentle caffeine lifted tired minds without making them reckless or unsteady. You could drink it and still work, still focus, still keep your hands sure. Over time, people added what they had. A little milk softened the bitterness. A spoon of sugar added quick energy. Nothing fancy, just enough to carry you through the next hours. But the heart of the drink stayed the same. Hot water, tea leaves, steam rising. This was not the tea of monks or nobles. This was the workers' tea break. Picture it: a short pause in a long shift. Men and women standing together, shoulders slumped, hands wrapped around thick mugs. The warmth seeps into cold fingers. Steam rises into tired faces. For a few minutes, the noise of the machines fades. In this world, tea wasn't about taste or ceremony. It was about staying upright, staying alert, staying alive. Tea didn't resist the new industrial age. It adjusted itself to it. When history needed a sober, reliable drink to power long days of iron and steam, tea didn't argue. It simply stepped forward and worked. The factory whistles have faded. The machines are quieter now. And here we are, in the modern world. Today, most of us don't worry about unsafe water or working 16-hour shifts beside roaring engines. Our problems are different. They're quieter, more personal. We live surrounded by choices, screens, noise, speed. And often, without noticing it, we're asking a simple question: who am I, right now? Look at tea today. It doesn't give one answer. It offers many. If you're looking for calm, tea becomes a ritual. Maybe it's a small Chinese tea table. You pour slowly. You watch the color change. You breathe a little deeper. Or it's a bowl of Japanese matcha, a bright green tea made from powdered leaves, whisked gently in silence. If you want warmth and connection, tea becomes chai, the way people drink it in India. You can almost smell it. Black tea simmered with milk and spices. A hot cup shared on a street corner. People talking, life moving all around you. If you want something steady and familiar, tea becomes a simple black tea, the way people drink it in England. Strong, hot, with a splash of milk. Morning, afternoon, a quiet pause. Nothing fancy, just comfort you can rely on. If you care about health, tea becomes ginger tea, green tea, or herbal blends. Something light, something clean. And if you want fun, tea becomes bubble tea. Sweet, colorful, chosen exactly the way you like it. This is tea's final transformation. It stops telling people what it was. Instead, it started asking a question. What do you need today? In that way, tea became a mirror. In your cup, you can see your mood, your habits, your pace, even a small reflection of who you are in that moment. So, how did this simple leaf survive emperors, monks, queens, factories, and centuries of change? Not by resisting the world, but by listening to it. Again and again, tea adjusted itself to human life. When people needed healing, it became medicine. When they needed focus, it became an anchor. When they needed status, it became a symbol. When they needed fuel, it became steady energy. And when they needed choice, it became flexible. The true survivor isn't the loudest thing in history. It's the thing that quietly asks, what's needed now? And then becomes it. So the next time you hold a cup of tea, pause, feel the warmth, watch the steam rise, notice the color. You're holding one end of a long, unbroken thread, stretching back through emperors and monks, ships and factories, kitchens and quiet rooms. And with this small, ordinary moment, you're carrying that story forward, one cup at a time.